Elder Scrolls Online is definitely not lacking any content. Like, this game is full of content. When I returned about 2 weeks ago to see how the game is in 2022, I saw so much content and stuff. I feel like actually the game has improved over the years. But yeah, what we love to do on this channel is we are loving to review MMOs. Be it already existing MMOs, like New World for example, or WoW, or upcoming MMOs like Ashes of Creation. And today we are going to have a closer look at the state of Elder Scrolls Online, and we are going to listen to the ESO expert Deltia's gaming ESO veteran. Like, I remember him from like 5-6 years ago. He was already making content. It's crazy. Watched him on Twitch and all. But yeah, let's see what he thinks about ESO and the state of it in 2022.
Is ESO in trouble? Is ESO a dead game? What is the state of the Elder Scrolls Online? These are the questions I'm constantly asked on and off stream about the Elder Scrolls Online, where it's at right now and where the future is. I wanted to take some time to answer these questions on my YouTube channel and give you my perspective on the game's current state and the future of the Elder Scrolls Online. Look, no one likes the Elder Scrolls Online more than I do, but I gotta be honest with you, this past year has been a roller coaster of massive ups and downs, both in terms of enjoyment and player base. But I want to break down what's been happening in the game to set the stage for what it's currently like and possibly
all MMOs these days, unfortunately.
Before I start, I think we can agree on 3 positives and 3 negatives about the Elder Scrolls Online in general. Positive, the combat in the game is absolutely phenomenal. It's nuanced along with deep character builds and customizations. The game has a ton of freedom with a
I totally agree with him here, and when I've returned and tried the combat, and I was playing a lot of New World, I have to say there are some similarities with the combat of New World, because you can also block skills, you can also like dodge skills and stuff, right? And it's like really cool, and you have to actually land melee attacks and stay in range and stuff when you, for example, charge a heavy attack. I think the combat feels really great. And unlike New World, they're actually cool combat animations. Like, I prefer the combat animations of ESO and spells versus New World. So that's a big plus for me here.
Customizations. The game has a ton of freedom. With a little bit of effort, a couple hours into the game past the tutorial and level 10,
it looks more fleshed out and shiny.
Do what you want and pick the content that you like to enjoy. And last positive, the community is just different than any other MMO, with some of the nicest people from all over the world. The 3 negatives are essentially
should come to
this is the way I see
FF14.
it. Number 1, it has terrible server performance, and
Holy
it has
shit.
since day 1. Skill delay, bugs, crashes, loading screens, along with no crossplay.
Facts. That is so true. If I play World of Warcraft, I can play for 2 weeks straight, sometimes longer. I don't crash a single time. If I play Elder Scrolls Online, I have now just played for, is it like 2 weeks or something? I've only played it now. And I crashed like, was it like 5 or 6 times? I think each 2-3 days I've at least one crash. And I had like, even back in the day, sometimes every day a crash almost. Like, I constantly have to log back into the game, and it happens even during dungeons and stuff. And I was like doing daily pledges, the daily dungeons, and I freaking crashed. And the issue is, like, sometimes groups kick you if you crash, right? But the good thing is everyone crashed, so I was still in the group. But it happened to me that I was the only one crashing, or that sometimes group mates crash. So I really think they should actually get a new server. Like, ESO has outdated servers. Like, Xenomax, if you're watching this and you listen to feedback, please get a better performing server. You just keep pushing out so many expansions. We have new classes like the Warden, the freaking Necromancer. It's actually really fun to play. But the issue is the server. Like, if you expand the game, expand the server too, or get a faster, stronger one. And just, I don't know, copy what you have on your old server to the new one. I know this will lead to some days that people can't play the game, I guess. I don't know how long it takes, but do something, please. Invest in it.
Number 2, constant overhauls of gear, skill,
I hate
champion
this.
points, and the never-ending treadmill.
You
of
farm for
keeping up
months,
is very,
you get
very
the
high.
best in
and
slot,
number 3,
and then it's
lack of communication with the
outdated.
developers and the reason for their decisions and how it will affect or improve the game's outcome. What many were looking forward to in the year 2022 was a new class, a new skill line, or something that accentuated our current builds and made them more interesting. Think Antiquities or the Civic Order skill line. Both were different, unique, and fun, and added a lot of variety to our current builds. So if we didn't get a class, hopefully we got this. Instead, we got pretty much more of the same in a new system, the card game Tales of Tribute, which I didn't think anyone really saw coming. But we did get some glimpses of what this game could become.
I've not tried it yet.
Actually work. Let me backtrack a little bit. In the years leading up to 2022, and ESO had done very well, partly because of the worldwide...
Wait a second, he said something about a card game in-game. Are they doing the same shit that they did in World of Warcraft with battle pets and stuff? So they add like mini games into a game. I think it's... Maybe some people like it. I think it's maybe funny a little bit, but it's also weird if you have one game and you put a mini game into a game. Like, it is still funny, it is cool. I mean, you have, for example, also in Final Fantasy XIV, the Gold Saucer, and you have like those mini games. Like, it's kind of fun, but that's weird. It's kind of like you have two games in one, sort of, but one is like the main game, and then you have like this kind of mini sort of game. I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's better to focus on just the game itself and not add too much mini games. So if you have like issues, fix them first before you add other stuff. That's just my opinion.
Pandemic. In fact, according to Steam charts, you can see a massive surge in players around April of 2020, and the game held on steadily this population trend for over the course of a couple years, with ups and downs that you would normally see in any MMO, with releases of new content, DLCs, and so forth. April 2020 saw a 92.92% increase on Steam charts in the average player base, with little over 28,000 active players.
That's a lot.
Most folks were quote-unquote working from home or pretending to be on a conference call like I was back in early of 2020. The game had a really healthy population at that time.
Oh, this reminds me of back in the day, like high school days. This was a long time ago. I've been out of high school for so many years now, but back in the day, we had like sometimes days where like teachers were sick and they had not enough teachers to actually take care of the class and watch the students. So they would send us home with homeworks and stuff, or we had like some sort of homeschooling because teachers were sick and stuff. And what happened then is usually during winter time, like a lot of us, we didn't go home. We went to like each other's homes and would play like video games or like console or something, like old school PlayStation and stuff. Like, this is what we did. And when GameCube was still a thing, like, it was crazy. We wouldn't do anything. Like, I can see this as a pandemic. Some people have like work from home, but they're actually not working from home.
Both in terms of consoles and PC.
Just
We
playing
saw a
games.
lot of interactivity on Twitch and a big resurgence in the viewership and people taking interest in the game, because a lot of people may have lost their job, unfortunately, or were working from home. And you know who you are. You also had the Grimoire chapter, which introduced Antiquities, a new system that gave pretty much everyone something to do. You could go dig things up, you could go collect housing items, or you could collect super powerful mythics, one-piece set bonuses that you can only use one, that are the bread and butter and staple of the top-tier builds in the game, both PvE and PvP. All this is to essentially say that ESO was doing well for 2 years, partly
There's
because
no lack of
interesting
content for sure.
including new ways to optimize and change your builds, stories, and the pandemic's impact on employment. Wrapping up the 2-year boom from the game, and we got the studio director's letter in late 2021, December. This discussed and highlight the past year's successes, struggles, and what was to come in 2022. And as you can imagine, it was very cryptic and vague, but 2 things stuck out to me. 1, ESO wanted to continue telling good stories, and 2, fix the server performance. I'm old enough to remember the first, second, and third time they said they were going to work on ESO servers and fix them and improve them. In fact, do you remember the year 2020? I think that was the year of increased performance. We're talking client, optimization, server, and database. That was the year of performance, but nothing really changed. That year didn't change anything, and they kicked the problem down the road to another couple years, and 2020 emerged. The studio director's letter indicated it would be another year of alleged performance improvements, but shockingly, we did see some increased performance in the year 2022. Matt Fire posted in April of 2022 about the hardware refresh. Essentially, ESO was running on a bag of potatoes from about 2012 on. They had some hardware that was very archaic and old, and I think this was holding back a lot of performance.
I want to tell you guys a story. So I used to be a hardcore PvP solo and small scale player. I would like 1vx constantly. I would go take resources and hope that 5-6 players would show up, sometimes more, to take it back, and I would just 1vx them. And I remember like there was like a time where like ultimates and the way, for example, meteors worked was like quite different. And I was once on, I think it was on my Magica. Yeah, it was on my Magica Dragon Knight. I was at the resource. And then like 9 players or so showed up to take it back after I changed it to even hard pack. Because I'm on EP on my MacDK. And suddenly there were like 4 meteors flying at me. Like one flies on me, and then when the 4th one was about to hit me, I freaking crashed. So it was crazy. It was just 10 people in one area, but because all those skills were flying around back in the day, and the server was completely horrible, and now it's still not so good in my opinion, but it was way worse back then. From 4 ultimates on me at like the same time, like just 1 second delay maybe, like meteor hit me, 1 second later one came, and it was crazy. I crashed at the 4th meteor. Maybe there was a 5th, I had no clue. There's only 4 I crash. Like, I logged, it was like, can't even log back in. I couldn't log back in for some seconds even, in fact, so I couldn't get back to the action. It is very strange. This is the only MMO that I have played with such performance issues. Like, if I had to give grades for everything, or like points, let's say 1 to 10, I would give 1 or 2 for server performance to ESO. I would give to like WoW or so, for example, maybe like 8. Because I crash seldom, but I do crash sometimes, but very seldom in WoW. So I give like 8 from 10, but like ESO would give like 1 or 2 from 10 if I had to give a score. Because that's how horrible it was. Maybe now it's a 4 from a 10 or 5 from a 10. I have to see if it's a little bit better, but I've noticed that each 2-3 days I crash at least once. So far I've like crashed like 3-4 times in 2 weeks or so. Maybe something like that, I guess.
They had some hardware that was very archaic and old, and I think this was holding back a lot of performance. For once, Xenomax Online Studios really didn't hype up this change, that it was going to radically change everything, and overnight it was going to be much improved. But that's exactly what happened. And the community and the player base responded. So during this hardware refresh, the next day, specifically on PC North America only, the game performed radically better, and the word and the buzz started getting around like, hey, have you actually played Cyrodiil? It's a lot different. Not perfect, but much improved.
Everything's 1-2 seconds delay.
This
That's what my last
was in
experience.
part due to the Microsoft acquisition of Xenomax Media, the parent company to Xenomax Online Studios, in September of 2021. We don't know if it's true, but it does seem interesting that within less than 1 year of the acquisition,
I think Microsoft
something
wants to
improved on
own
the server
everyone.
for a segment of the population. The population kind of settled back into normal according to Steam charts. Now look, Steam charts isn't the most accurate indicator of everyone playing the game, because you have consoles, or you have someone like me that doesn't even use Steam Client to launch their game. But it's a good indicator of the fluctuations.
I don't use Steam
of player
Client.
base. And it settled back down to about 13 to 14,000 average.
I think, yeah, if you know a game is often used or like opened on Steam, I think New World is the best example. You can get numbers, but ESO, because like he said, console, and many people don't use a Steam launcher. I'm one of them. I don't use Steam launcher. I just use the regular launcher to open ESO. Then you can see the real numbers really. So yeah. And by the way, guys, if you're new to this channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more content. Let's get to 60,000 subs. We've already managed to get over 50,000. Let's go to 60,000 next, please.
Players per month. Once the hardware refresh took place, the servers immediately flood with players seeing if the rumors were true. Does ESO actually run better? Absolutely it does, but not perfect. Cyrodiil turned from a barren wasteland into a 24/7
Yeah, it looks
brawl,
like
just
not
like old
any lag,
times.
right?
A lot of my friends who moved on from the game returned, and I was living the dream, constantly playing and streaming on and off stream, and it was some of the best time in the game history. Around that time, we also started to get details on the High Isles
That's my
chapter,
old
the
main
latest
stem
in the
cell.
Elder Scrolls Online. I got to privately test the card game Tales of Tribute along with new gear sets and mythics, and my opinion on the card game was this: meh. I'm an old school Magic the Gathering player. In fact, I used to chug down Diet Mountain Dews constantly sitting there playing Magic the
in
Gathering.
real life.
Control deck, counterspell, baby. And now I got a 6-year-old son, and we spend a lot of time playing Pokemon. So I love card games, but this one I couldn't stand. The reason why is it's a deck builder, primarily based on just purely math and a lot of RNG. Moreover, there wasn't a whole lot of flashy animations, and it was super complex to start getting your head wrapped around and start playing and actively get involved in it. No offense to those that like the card game, but I thought it was poorly designed, and there was nothing grabbing me beyond the rewards to do it over and over and over that were exciting. So I moved on and didn't really play it.
So
But
like with
there
WoW
was a
Hearthstone, they're
diamond
trying
in the
to
rough
make
with the High
sub-games?
Isles chapter, something that radically changed the game, and that was Oakensoul, the one-piece mythic item that locked you into only using one bar but gave you massive buffs, making your build much...
Wait a second. Yeah, I was told about like one bar build. So this is what people use. While equipped, you are unable to swap between your parent back up weapon and gain main. You get like everything. Holy shit, all those buffs you get. Yo, but then that is like so noob friendly, right? Like, I think it takes skill to manage 2 bars. You need to have very fast reaction time. You need to know when should you... which skill, for example, should you bar cancel, right? Like, if you switch. Like, you have sometimes skills have a longer cast time. And what I always recommend for, like, people if they want to have max performance, try to make your rotation where if you're on a back bar and you're switching, use the less skill, the one with the longest cast time. You have something that takes 2 seconds or something, try to cancel this instead, and a skill that takes not even half second to come out. For example, I have a good skill. I think it was, is it Lotus Flower on Warden? I think that's the one, or was it Netch? No, I think it was Lotus Flower. It takes like 0.3 seconds longer than the Netch. So I would sometimes, instead of, I used to do actually the Netch as last, like Netch bar swap, because you also do this kind of animation. But then I've noticed that actually, I think the Lotus Flower was like a little bit slower. So I adjusted actually my rotation where I used this before I bar swap. And I've noticed a slight actually DPS increase even on a build I'm running.
That locked you into only using one bar but gave you massive buffs, making your build much simpler and easier to play with not that many downsides. My friend Hack the Minotaur, I think, originally came up with these one bar builds, which would eventually transform into their own Mythic Oakensole. Hey, that's not fair, I want a Mythic, maybe jumping a lot? I imagine Hack's original intent was to keep the build very simple for folks who struggle with bar swapping, high actions per minute, or having a physical disability. Oakensole on launch was absolutely amazing in PvE, specifically solo PVE, and it was absolutely mind-bogglingly god mode overpowered in PvP, which we hit another snag in ESO's content and their balancing, which is they don't separate both PvE and PvP, including gear sets and/or skills. In PvE, I believe that Oakensole originally was launched in one of the best mythics of all time, or gear pieces to ever hit the Elder Scrolls Online, well before it got nerfed. More to that later. Finally, people were getting 70, 80, 90,000 K parses and getting access to veteran trials, a whole new world of the game that only the high parse elitist players had been seeing. The great thing about Oakensole when it originally launched in PvE was this. It would not outperform a 2-bar build. In fact, I ran my Oakensole Templar back to back. The exact same gear, plus or minus the Oakensole, with the exact same skills, exact same champion points, the exact same passes, everything. Oakensole got a trifecta in 22 minutes in Veteran Vatashram Hollows, the hardest solo arena in the game. Meanwhile, my 2-bar got 20 minutes and absolutely obliterated the content. Take this exact same Oakensole and put it on a Parsnami, and you could get pretty high numbers with really good players getting well over 100,000. But give them 2 bars and you're looking at 120 to 130,000. Thus, average player really increased the floor, but it didn't decrease the ceiling. Exactly what we needed in PvE. However, the Oakensole was so disgusting overpowered in PvP, you were almost forced to use it. You'd have Calorian Nightblades running around one-shotting everyone with no counterplay. Or you'd have my 1-bar Necro Stamina Bomber.
I think the issue I see is if you have like less experienced players too, like I said, it takes skill to manage 2 bars and know when to use which skill, when to reapply a dot or self-buff or something like for major sorcery or for sustain. Like if this is the meta, for example, now, you have people only spam 3-4 skills instead of maintaining, let's say, 7-8 skills all the time, right? And I think that's not good for if you're like a small scaler or a solo PvP, because if you encounter 3-4 other players, they only spam 2-3 skills on you, and they have like all the buffs and things that a good player would have that knows how to manage his 2 bars. Even if everything deals 5 or 10% less damage, for example, or they are like slightly behind a good player, they are now from a bad lifted up to an average player or something. And a good player can kill these days maybe like 4 or 5 bad players, sometimes 6, but you can almost not, the way they made it, as a very good player kill 4 average players, for example. This is almost impossible these days. Like, there must be some bad, at least 2 bad and 2 average, maybe then still, but now everyone's like an average player with this set, kind of, because pressing 3-4 skills doesn't take much skill. Like, you just press tuk 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 tuk, and the person in front of you half bar down.
are nuking entire groups with just a couple clicks of the button. As annoying
Attacks
as
the
this
skill
was to have
ceiling
a
down in
super
my
high
opinion.
damage meta and constantly dying, Cyrodiil and the game were alive. The hardware refresh in combination with the new chapter and
Good that I love
brought
PvE a lot
massive
too.
influx of
So I
players.
don't
and
get
was
too
having the time of
frustrated.
my life. Well, until update 35. Going back to one of the negatives about ESO is the constant 3-month cycle of radical overhauls to the game's core mechanics. Most veteran or returning players know this, and in general, every 3 months, there will be a new trendy gear set, mythic, or skill you have to adapt and use or you'll fall behind. It's what makes retaining players in ESO so hard. You have no idea where to start when you come back. Most of your gear sets, skills are outdated or ineffective, which is great for an ESO content creator like myself to share this information freely on my website. But it's a turnoff to a lot of players, and they don't return because they know 3 months later, everything's gonna change. Well, sadly, we got more of the same. An update
Time
35
loss for
brought
farming
a
stuff.
titanic amount of changes from absolutely nowhere. Update 35 arrived on the PTS in July of 2022 and was quite possibly the biggest, most radical amount of changes the game has seen since the early launch days. Overhauls to light and heavy attack scalings and resources, total revamp in damage over times and healing over time, unprecedented class changes to include new animations for Templar jabs, one of the quintessential skills in the game that I don't think anyone asked for. The list went on, but you see the point. WTF, where'd this come from? 8 years deep into the game, and we're blindsided by these massive changes. And what's most important here is
What pissed me off when I returned to ESO was, and I have no clue how I got it, when I got it, what happened. So I logged back in, I updated, it took me like a half day for my freaking client to update the game for some reason, because I was like hundreds of patches and DLCs behind. Then, like after half day my game is ready, I launch in for the first time after such a long break. And I'm actually surprised because in my login screen, I see I suddenly have 3 race and name change tokens. I have no clue how I got them, but I look at all my characters, I talk to people, I love to play Agonian and Red Guard. I love my Red Guards are going. Everyone keeps saying, oh, they are so terrible now. You want to roll for Orc or Imperial on Stamina and on Magicka. If you want to be max DPS, even for Stem DPS, Dunmer is really good. And Khajiit. Khajiit is all-rounder now. So I log on my Stamina Khajiit Nightblade. I changed it to Magicka Nightblade, and I performed as good or better probably as my Breton Magicka Nightblade. So now my Breton Magicka Nightblade is useless because now I have the Khajiit Stem Nightblade. That's a better Magicka Nightblade than the Breton. And I actually made Khajiit because I want to have a Stamina Nightblade and the Breton for the Magicka Nightblade. Now I can be everything on my character. That's nice, but 80% of my characters are almost Red Guards, and they are apparently useless. I already changed one to Orc, the Stem Warden, and my Stem DK is now a Imperial because I have some cool outfit I want to actually try. And it's insane. And my Argonian Mag Warden is apparently like horrible DPS now and stuff because every single race received spell damage bonus and stuff. So not am I only like a couple of hundreds of Magicka behind another race for more tankiness and more self-healing. Now I'm like 258 spell damage behind on my Argonian. And yeah, I see now why they gave out probably for free name and race change tokens because of the races overhaul. But for me it sucks because I don't just have 3 characters. I have like actually 15 characters. I got 15 slots in game. And is it like 7 or 6 Red Guards or something? I lost count even. I got a couple of Bretons too. And now Breton is not so good anymore apparently. Like you want to go Dunmer or Khajiit or something for Magicka. So I'm pretty screwed now because I can't race change all of them. I got like just 3 of them. It was not every, I can change every. And everything's nerfed. So I would probably focus now in my time only on like 2 or 3 characters. The rest I just maybe don't play anymore or wait for changes. But it's fine. I just switch between 2 or 3 meta characters, I guess.
Is we didn't get an indication why. Communicating clearly with us, what was the intent behind this? Why is it beneficial for the game? More on that later. The community was in an uproar with the massive amount of feedback given on the forums and Twitter and all those other nasty places people spam nasty things, but most of the changes stuck and only a few were reverted. With so much uproar, ZOS did post on the public test server in August that they were going to work on a brief Q&A regarding these issues, which never happened. And here you have another main disappointment to the year. leading to a mass exodus in the game. Me personally, if you're going to change your game, look, it's your game. It's not mine. I'm just one player. That's great. But please, as a customer, tell me why you're changing the game.
Yeah.
Why this radical? Why is it so important? What is
why
the
stem
end
races,
goal?
mech
And
races
where
now?
are we
Why?
on the process? None of that was clearly communicated, and it feels like we're on a roller coaster every time a PTS hits. Oh my god, is it going to completely nerf my character, gut all of my skills and my gear sets, and I'm going to have to move on? Just please, Xenomax, if you watch this, tell us what's going on, why is it so important, and where are we on the journey? Another issue with Update 35 is it pushed builds specifically more into the hybrid playstyle.
I have an easier solution, and there's a psychological factor too in the game. If you nerf people, they feel very bad about themselves. Like, I feel bad about myself if I get nerfed by Zenimax. So I have a suggestion, Zenimax, if you're watching this. How about you just buff every single dungeon, mob, world boss, make stuff more difficult, but not make us weaker. Or make battle spirit adjustments in PvP and not adjust builds. There are like other ways to change the surroundings instead of the players, right? Like their builds. Like, if PvE is too easy, give them 10% more health and damage all the mobs. I feel like they should do this with regulums for questing, because questing is so easy. I can pull 5-6 random mobs and I'm not even dropping to half my health bar. Like, make mobs more difficult, please. That would be a good step. Give them 10% more health, 10% more damage, or give them new mechanics that you have to dodge or interrupt, otherwise they take half your health with one shot. That is a good idea, but not nerf the players.
Meaning everyone essentially runs a very homogenized build, all very similar. Dual wield on the front, 2H on the back, all using medium armor, and they say, I'm a stam build. No, wait, I'm a magic build. No, really, I'm a hybrid, which is essentially the exact same build that everyone runs, plus or minus 2 to 3 class skills.
I saw stem stocks.
Class identity eroded. The player base responded with a
I saw a funny stem stock the other day. So I went to Zero Deal just to check out what's going on, and there was like a small scale or something. He put like 4 people with his friend, and they killed the 4. And he had like dual wield. He had like stamina skills, like vigor and stuff. But he had backbar a staff. It was, I think it was an Inferno, was it like Inferno staff or something? I forgot what kind of staff it was, but it was a magical staff. Like, why the heck do you use a magical staff, backbar and front dual wield? You use stamina skills. Huh? Like, this confused me.
Mass exodus of players and a lot of content creators. And we were left with a pre-pandemic type number, which ESO currently is hovering at. And you also saw a massive reduction in interest on Twitch. Another massive disappointment was the nerf to Oakensoul in Update 35, taking down some of the big major buffs to minor, making it very hard to use this Mythic and still perform very well. This would solve the issue for PvP, but it would hamper the Mythic in PvE, which was the great equalizer for a lot of people that enjoyed this Mythic, and it brought them pure enjoyment in the Elder Scrolls Online again. Oakensoul builds faded, both in PvE and PvP, and so too did the community, unfortunately. And now you get to Update 36 that was recently launched here on PC and coming soon on console. What Zenomax did in reaction to all of this upheaval and uproar is, well, really not change a whole lot in Update 36. So this is better for some of the population, people that want to come back to the game, get caught up. You're reasonably going to have 3, 4, 5 months to come back, farm gear sets, and have a stable build for quite a while. For a hardcore veteran players, you're not going to have a whole lot to do, and your build's going to remain somewhat the same. And for better or for worse, they really didn't offer a lot of game-breaking new gear sets that we know of yet, or mythics. There were some good alternatives to things we're currently using, but not a set and forget you have to have it for every single build. That's where we're at. Not a lot of combat, gear, or skill changes. And the interesting thing about this November update is it's the last in the year-long cycle. So how typically ESO works is the meta, or what you have right now in November, is going to carry on for 5 or 6 months. Typically, you have a couple months of just seasonal events. January.
I think it's okay if like a meta lasts for 6 months. Even better if 1 year, because usually you spend depending how long you play, how casual or how hardcore game you are, you take like 1 to 2 months to get the build together once it gets revealed, right? Or a new set comes. And then you have at least 3-4 months or more to actually enjoy it and play it, and then you can farm again. And if you already have a build and you don't farm anything for 3 months or so, let's say, you can make tons of, like, hundreds of thousands of gold in game, and you can just buy the new meta, for example, unless it's like a monster set or something that you must get from a dungeon. But there's like overland sets you can just buy for, like, one piece costs maybe 100k gold. But hey, what if every week you get over 200-300k gold anyway, or even more? And every week after your build is finished, you can save for another gear piece for the next update. And then you buy them for like 100-200k each. Or you just transmute everything. You have like transmute crystals that you just save until new meta comes. And you do just 1 or 2 dungeon runs, for example. And you just transmute 4 or 5 gear pieces. Because right now I have at least 4 or 5 free transmutes of items now already. And I've been only back for what? 2 weeks or so? And I can already transmute 4 items. That's how many crystals I already gathered by doing like daily pledges, and each daily pledge like 5 and stuff crystals. And you need like 50 to change something. That's how it is.
It comes out and they start teasing and hinting at and or releasing what's going to be coming in the chapter in June. Then typically you hit February and the next update is going to hit the PTS, which leads into March. So you have about a 5 months span for what your build is right now. The current meta and PvP tanking meta is what your build is going to have. Again, great for people trying to catch up. For veteran players, they're moving on, checking out different games, and seeing if it's worth it. Speaking of newer returning players, it's getting more and more complex to know exactly which gear set to use and why. Take Whirl of Depths, for instance. The tooltip is like reading Moby Dick novel. Not that I've ever read that. When you deal damage with a light attack, you apply Whirl of Depths to the target, dealing frost damage over 8 seconds. When this effect ends, a 5-meter whirlpool is created on the target for 6 seconds, dealing frost damage every 1 second. This effect can occur once every 18 seconds and scales off your highest weapon or spell damage. Oh, am I done reading?
Yeah, why must this be so much text? Just add notes like 129 spell damage. You deal so and so much frost damage over 8. Like why not just keep the numbers, and when you do this and like light attacks, like you could write light attacks causes 988 frost damage over 8 seconds. After the effect, you don't have to write when the effect, just write after the effect are 5-meter blah 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 is created for 6 seconds, dealing so and so much frost damage. Or so, like you can short this by half at least.
Dealing frost damage every 1 second. This effect can occur once every 18 seconds.
Don't use full
scales off your
sentences.
highest weapon or spell damage. Oh, am I done reading? I'm waking up from my nap. You see how long that is? It's not plus 100 willpower. It's not plus 100 strength. It's not one set. It's getting more and more complex to actually parse out and figure out, is this better than the previous set? Is this better than raw damage? What is this set trying to do?
It's a waste of time reading so much.
Is Order's Wrath. This is a craftable set, and the 5-piece does
take longer reading this than farming it almost.
Very simple, intuitive, and easy to understand that set. But when you compare it with a trial set like Whirl of Depths, you're just lost with, is this really good?
You're lost in the Whirl of Depths, literally.
On the parse dummies to actually figure it out for you, not the game, because it's not intuitive, thus leading to more confusion, more frustration. We're not done with the big changes and the big things happening to Elder Scrolls Online. One is outside of its control, and that's New World, a game that launched last year that had a lot of problems, but a lot of promise as well. Has a lot of similarities to ESO, specifically territories and big, huge fights, which I think are attractive to someone like
combat
me.
is a bit
In
similar.
fact, I've been playing it again, trying to give it another chance after these reworks and these new servers, and I'm saying it's kind of fun. This game actually 10x'd its population overnight with huge, massive peaks amount of players, and the average population is big time gains. People want to see it.
You know what's funny? This is now way higher on Twitch than freaking World of Warcraft. Like World of Warcraft was the most streamed, long lasting, like for a longer time stable MMO. And now New World is so popular for weeks now, and it's very high. It quite often beats actually WoW in numbers now on Twitch. What is actually shocking, because I always thought World of Warcraft was like the #1 played there. Like, sure, Lost Ark had a hype and stuff, and some other games, or FF14 was pretty high, but this was just like 2-3 months and then it went down. But World of Warcraft has been like that for a long time, very high. And New World now is so stable. I think the next 2-3 months it will still probably beat in numbers WoW on Twitch, at least.
Is this the next big MMO? Does this have staying power? Does this have a relevant, massive endgame? And people will flood to
I think it lacks the
MMORPGs
franchise
if
and
there's
the universe
potential,
to
if there's
maintain
something
over a
new
long
and
time. Though.
interesting, and if it works. You also have a combination of Call of Duty, Overwatch, God of War, and World of Warcraft, the juggernaut MMO, launching a new expansion at the end of this month.
Yep.
ESO isn't a ghost town by any means. It's kind of settled back down into low population pre-pandemic, but it's getting harder and harder to get groups, whether it's endgame or just random Cyrodiil fights.
Yo, BGs.
Population is quite sparse. It's not anecdotal only. It's through these Steam charts, through Twitch tracker, the general interest is down. But that's not to say it's a bad game. And that leads me to the final point. Is ESO in trouble? Is the game dead? Or what's going on? I don't think the game's dead and it's gonna wither away into oblivion. No pun intended. It's Elder Scrolls Online. It's all about exploration. It's about questing. It's about exploring. And that's really what the game was morphed into. When it originally launched, it was about Cyrodiil. It was about trials. It was about conquering things, getting guilds together, doing bigger and better tasks.
And it worked for months.
Even overland content was extremely challenging and took a lot of people to band together. ESO has morphed dramatically into a solo player's game. In fact, there's an article with creative director Rich Lambert that points to this. Rich Lambert did an interview recently with GamesIndustry.biz, where he says, quote, "That's the hardest part. Most Elder Scrolls fans don't want other players in their game." And he's probably right to this point. He knows his game better than I do. The people that are attracted to this game, the new players, might be just interested in the story and exploration. And maybe that's what the game has morphed into. Less and less MMO, more and more Skyrim, with people just kind of hanging around. Next year will be the number 9 for ESO. Most people ask me what I want to see and what do I expect in the game.
That's actually true. So I went to freaking Oridon. Wait, maybe I still have those screenshots I can show you. So I went to Oridon, I went to freaking Elsewhere, and the RP community is freaking huge in Elder Scrolls Online. It feels to me like a pure RP game. Like you have freaking bands play near to the Way Shrine with very interesting outfits and stuff. People are role-playing as vampires, as mercenaries, freaking Dark Brotherhood assassins, and they even talk like that in chat. You have people actually drink and sit down somewhere or use some funny emotes. Like RP is so huge, so large in ESO. It is beating, I think, or maybe the same like Final Fantasy 40 when it comes to RP, at least. Like ESO has such a large RP community. There are even house parties going on. And it's crazy. You have in ESO more than 20 houses you can actually buy. And they are themed after races. You have for each race at least 3 or 4 houses you can buy. It doesn't matter which race you're on. The only thing is some need achievements or some are only limited to events like Halloween or something like that, right? But each race gets 3 kinds of houses you can buy, and you can actually buy it with another race too. And you have like 20 plus houses now with all the races and all. It's interesting. And people can invite others to their house. You can decorate them, have house parties. You can just go to freaking cities like Oridon or Elsewhere or freaking Dishon and you can RP. Like the RP community is large, like seriously.
Game. I expect more of the same. 4 dungeons, 1 trial, and a new system to grind that's non-combat driven. PCU is supposed to get the hardware refresh treatment in March, and that would be great for the community with consoles shortly thereafter. But will that be enough to keep players around? I don't think so, because it wasn't for the PCNA server in their crowd. Yes, we got a huge massive influx with April, May, and June, the chapter, along with the hardware refresh. But if the game isn't adding
I have a good suggestion. I will tell you after this.
There's a lot to choose from in today's marketplace. It may not retain those old school or hardcore players that enjoy the combat and build customization like myself. It'll always have a population for exploration and questing, as this is what the game is morphed into. Look, I'm not quitting Elder Scrolls Online. I'm still going to make build videos. I'm still going to make videos for the game, a lot of beginner content, and I've also moved on to different games as well, specifically Destiny 2. Been having a great time putting some builds on my website, deltiasgaming.com, along with streaming it live, doing some sweaty spaghetti PvP, and also a lot of PvE, raiding, master dungeons, and grandmasters have been a lot of fun. And also I plan on dipping my toes into New World, Starfield, and Hogwarts Legacy when it comes out. Like I said when I first started, I don't know if anyone likes ESO
I want to play Hogwarts
too. I in fact love the game,
Hogwarts
probably
Legacy.
more than I should. I have great attachments, great memories, and great connections with the game, but I want to see it do well. I want to see clear lines of communication. I want to see where the game is going and why is it so important. And I want some content that's relevant to me and the people that play the game with me, so I have people to play with and I can feel more like an MMO than a single-player Skyrim. But what do you think? Leave me a comment below. Is this game headed to obscurity? Is it done? Is it going to make a massive comeback? Or is it fine where it's at? Thanks for watching.
Okay, my feedback on this is it's not fine where it is, because there needs to be something done for it to maintain the active player base that it got from the pandemic and everything. And yeah, I have actually a solution for this. Let me first of all give this a thumbs up. Like, I really like the way Deltia's Gaming makes his videos. Like, Deltia does very good videos, also nice build videos. I checked out some of them. And what this game needs and how to fix this single player kind of issue is make questing, exploration, everything more difficult related to PvE. Mobs must be stronger. Like, they need to find some sort of difficulty balance that makes it where casual players can still beat it, but they have to play very careful. And they have to maybe just pull 1 or 2 mobs at a time. If they pull 5 or 6, they die. I have actually evidence in practice that this kind of system will actually promote group play, but not kill really single player or solo play. So if you look at World of Warcraft Classic, for example, if you're grinding and leveling up a character, you can max this character, and that's what I have done. I've leveled up characters 2 different ways. One was completely solo and one was with another person. And with another person I progressed faster and better, but I could still solo enough quests and zones to actually reach max level by myself. I had to skip some quests because they were difficult, but I could solo stuff and get to like at least level 30, 40 by myself. But if I wanted to be quick, I would find another person. So how do they fix the issue with the single player sort of aspect? They just make PvE way more difficult. Buff mobs by 10% health, 10% damage, or even 20%. Probably 20% is even better. So they hit 20% harder and they live 20% longer. If you do this, people will play either very careful if they play solo, or they are tempted to have at least 1 or 2 friends play with them, maybe even more. And then world bosses can no longer be soloed, because right now I can solo every single world boss, and my gear is still partially purple, not even completely legendary. So probably if I was like all legendary, I would gain like a couple of percentage more DPS, I would even kill this faster. But yeah, if PvE gets more difficult, mobs are harder to kill, world bosses, people are encouraged to make groups and they come together again as a community. And not everyone does their own thing. But there's still a room for those that want to do their own thing, but they have to play more careful or run certain builds. But yeah, that's my feedback on this. I think this will solve everything, because my issue is just in ESO, to be honest, performance and too easy PvE. If there was no crashes, no lag, Zero Day would be fluent, BGs would be fluent, trials, dungeons fluent, you don't crash, it's perfect, and if PvE is a challenge. Because ESO is so full of content. You have crazy large amounts of houses you can obtain, housing items. You have so many cool looking zones of different climate zones with some races theme like Rovka with the orcs, for example, like Osinium and all that. You have elsewhere with the Khajiit. Like, you have many beautiful, nice looking zones. Crafting system is very, very great. Now you can also craft housing items and target dummies and whatever. It's very nice. And so many styles and motifs you can farm. Very good. But yeah, make PvE more difficult and fix the performance. I think this is the main issue ESO has. Too easy PvE. But yeah, let me know in the comment section what you think. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. If you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this one a thumbs up. And yeah, I will see you guys next time.